Welcome to another episode of the Soothing Semantics podcast. I am your host, Rafi Pinsky. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, leave your comments. For all of your real estate needs, of course, follow me on Instagram at Rafi the Realtor. Sign up to my weekly newsletter in my link in bio to receive all of the South Florida real estate updates. This week on the 192nd, pretty sure it's the 192nd episode of the Soothing Semantics podcast, we have Rene Lacad on the show.
Happy to be here, bro.
It's a pleasure having you. I met Rene at Adam Sosnick's event for the Vault. They were, trying to get everybody to the Vault. So shout out to you, Adam. Thank you for putting people together. And, I was recently on Valuetainment as well. So check out the Israel-Palestine debate. But Adam, you're the man. Thank you for just making these awesome connections happen. Ladies and gents, if you haven't heard of Rene, make sure to tune into this entire episode. Rene Lacad is now you're 29, right?
29.
Okay, 29-year-old college dropout turned entrepreneur, the founder of Lock Advertisement, an advertising agency that's partnered with over 40 businesses and generated over 40 million plus in online revenue.
75
At this point,
now.
I knew this is an
75
older
now.
because this is an older thing. So I was about to say it's probably higher than that now. In addition to Lock Advertisement, Rene's also founded other companies that have done over $1 million in revenue, as well as consulted for many of social media's familiar faces. His lifestyle content caught traction on social media, where he's been able to reach millions of people and help aspiring entrepreneurs break free from the 9-to-5. Now, it's funny because I know in the office you were just making posts that you're essentially doing that again, but you're doing like 9 to 9. Now, there's a lot of stuff here. This is Rene's website, so you can go to renelacad.com and take a look at everything that he's up to. So instead of just reading off of this, I want to have a man-to-man with this guy right here.
Yeah.
So, dude, thanks again for joining me.
Bro, happy to be here. Happy to be here. I know we met at that event and then we made it happen, so it's good.
For
happy
sure.
to be here. It seems like you did your homework, so I'm like kind of excited to see where this goes, because even when we were chatting earlier, the questions were good already. So I'm curious to see what you got from me today.
Well, yeah, because I asked you, are you taking the Porsche or the Lambo?
Porsche or the Lambo? Yeah, it was the Lambo.
Right. Yeah, he showed up in a black Urus. Mm-hmm. So prior to the advertising company, I like to go into people's backgrounds a little bit to get an idea of where they grew up, how events turned in their life, and what brought them to the point that they're at now. So I listened to a nice amount of the podcast you did, and I can't even remember the name off the top of my head.
Right.
But you were telling the host how you grew up in California, was raised by a single mother, didn't have things easy at all, and it shaped you. So give us a little bit of a background. We won't let's not go too far into that.
Yeah.
Kind of keep it brief if you don't mind. But give us a synopsis of what your life was like in California.
I grew up with a single mom. I'm Filipino, ethnically, so very traditional Asian Filipino woman. And her goal was just honestly to survive, because I had no dad. It was her working a job. Me and my little brother, she had to raise us both on like $30,000 a year, which is damn near impossible in California. So it kind of like molded me into the person I am today. And, when you don't really have a parent in the house, like a father figure specifically, but a parent in general, because my mom was in the office all day, you kind of have to figure things out on your own, and we didn't really have any money. So I got really resourceful. And it shaped me as a human being. So in short, that's kind of just what it is. I had a single mom. We didn't have any money. Everyone has seen similar stories to this, but it worked out well for me in the end.
Right. That's usually how it works.
Yeah.
'Cause I like when that guy said
it's one or the other, I think. When you have a single parent, you either like perpetuate the cycle of poverty, or you get out. So thankfully, I was the latter.
Yes, absolutely. It's very true, man. It's like the analogy with the two sons of the drunk parent. So let's say you have an alcoholic father.
Oh yeah,
you either have the son that becomes another alcoholic version of that father, or you have the other son that says, "I'm not perpetuating that cycle. I'm going to be the complete opposite."
Right.
It takes depends on your train of thought. I know you mentioned on the show that you were selling sold stuffed animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, like give us a little bit of a rundown about that.
Okay, so yeah, you don't I think the beautiful part about growing up poor is you don't really understand like morality in a sense. But like, here's what I mean by that. So my first hustle, my first business, quote unquote, we were young. We were like 11, 12, 13. And we found a claw machine, one of those big claw machines in the mall where you could, like, one of our friends could fit in there because he was a tiny guy. We were just like, yo, you should go in there and just take stuffed animals. And he was like, sure, why not? So we went in there and just grabbed stuffed animals. And we realized, we're like, yo, you got 2 stuffed animals. Like, we could sell these, right? So I was like, all right, cool. So we all went home, got backpacks, went back to the mall, put them in this claw machine. He grabbed all of these stuffed animals from this claw machine. It's so bad. But the thing is, when you grow up with no parents, like, and it's summertime, you're like 10, 11 years old, you just kind of do whatever you want. So we were going to the mall to figure this stuff out. But we all go home, grab backpacks, put them inside this claw machine. It was a giant claw machine. And he starts grabbing these stuffed animals and just shoving them in our backpacks. And once we fill up all 3 of our backpacks, we get out of there. We leave with 3 backpacks filled with stuffed animals. Now, at the time, we wanted to get bikes, like just bikes, so we could bike around and stuff, because we were walking and that was difficult. So we needed bikes, and we wanted to make money for bikes. And those cheap bikes you get for $150. So that was kind of the goal for each of us, to make $150. And we would knock door to door. We would just go door to door in the neighborhood, knock, and say, hey, we're selling these stuffed animals. And we would just say something like, I don't know, like our school gave it to us or something, our summer program. We'd be like, we're selling these stuffed animals for our summer program so we can get a pool. Because it was hot. This is California. So you're in LA. It's like 105 degrees, 104 degrees, like on a bad day. We're knocking on these doors, right? And we're like, we're looking for these stuffed animals. And these adults would answer and be like, where are your parents at? And they're like, oh, they're at work. And they just felt so bad for us that we would just say any price and they would buy it. They're like, oh, how much? Right? We tried $2. It worked. So then we went to the next door. We knocked and they said, oh, how much? We're like, $5. They gave us $5. So then we walked the next one. How much? $10. And they would give us $10. And very rarely did we get a no. We almost had like 100% close rate, just because what kind of adult do you have to
no
be?
to kids with stuffed animals?
You look at a kid with a stuffed animal, like 3 kids with stuffed animals sweating because it's hot. Outside, we just want a pool. It's so hot. Like, you'd have to be a monster to just be like, nah. Like, I couldn't imagine someone, like, if a kid showed up to my door, I would buy the stuffed animal. I wouldn't say this, you know. So yeah, we sold all of them within like 2 hours, and we walked away with like $200, $200. And I remember I got the first bike because I was the leader. It was my idea, and then we wanted to go do it again, but then we went back to the mall, to the claw machine, and then we realized that they kind of figured it out, so they locked it, and then we ended up with 1 bike that day.
So it was like a one-time thing.
It was a one-time thing. Yeah, it wasn't really a hustle because we went back, but they kind of figured it out because like they obviously have the prizes in the claw machine, and they saw that it was nearly empty. They're like, okay, somebody's stealing this, and then they fixed it. Unfortunately, didn't last very long for us, but it was fun while it lasted. That's like one of my earliest memories of making money, because it was so much money to me at the time. $100, $200. I remember thinking like, this is like, I'm rich, right? Like, I remember that. But that's what it is. When you grow up broke, you have no real concept of money. So for me, $100, $200, that was kind of like I was a millionaire pretty much.
Right. I mean, sometimes when you grow up rich, you have no concept of money.
Well, I think it's the flip side.
Right.
Right. So for me, I had no concept of money. I thought everything was a lot. People that grow up rich, they have no concept of money, but they think everything's a little bit.
Right. They think money is there's so much of it, it doesn't really mean much. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a better mindset to have than people that would have almost a scarcity mindset. Because I think the reason people stay broke, it's not because they have rich parents or someone to pass down their wealth. It's more so the knowledge that they pass down. Totally. So the reason rich kids stay rich is because parents pass down information to stay rich.
Absolutely.
Whereas parents that are broke pass down broke information to their children, and their children grow up with that same broke information. And you see it in society all the time, because I've seen both sides of it. I've seen, as someone that's affluent, you could say now, I look at how my friends spend money. I have a friend that has a yacht in his backyard. It costs him $70,000 a month just to have it in his backyard, right? And then I go home and I see people from back home, my little brother even, and he thinks $200 is a lot of money. Or sometimes he'll send me a screenshot. I hate to call him out like this, but he'll send me a screenshot of his bank. He's like, help, I need money. I'm like, all right, cool, I'll send him some money. But it's crazy the juxtaposition between these two types of people, and it's mostly because of the information in their brain.
Yeah, I've totally realized that every year as things progress, I love the coffee conversation you were having. Do
Coffee
you remember you were talking about saving money for like going on offense versus defense? Dude, up until maybe 5-6 years ago, I had this saving mentality. I was so afraid to get rid of money. And I would listen
Is it a Jewish
to
thing? Sorry.
it definitely maybe is a fact, but
No, because I see the memes, but like, is that true?
well, I think saving is important to an extent, but
I
it
agree.
can't be the rule. Meaning,
Yeah.
if you are making $5K a month and then over the course of time you end up making 50, if you're spending that 50, you're still broke.
100%.
So
I agree.
there has to be a difference in the income and the spending to some level. If you're spending all of everything you have constantly, as you progress, as your income progresses, you're spending every dollar of it.
I think that's the issue with a lot of people is they don't realize that. So the name of the game is money will always matter to you until a certain amount, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Like once you start making, let's say, I don't know, $5 or $6 million a year, money doesn't really matter at that point. Everything becomes inconsequential. But anything underneath that, you can still go broke. Realistically, you like
Well, you can go broke on that too. If you can find enough things to spend money on, you can still.
fair. But I mean, like just daily things.
It's much harder.
It's much harder. Yeah, it's much harder.
Things become very affordable.
You have to be really stupid if you do it. Yeah, but
yeah.
in general, so I think what people don't realize is you have to hit a certain threshold in order to save money. Saving money should never be a strategy for anyone making, let's say, under $15,000 to $20,000 a month. It should always be to get it above that number.
Totally.
Because I think it's going to be easier for you to get it above that number than it is for you to save your way into getting rich.
100%.
Because once you get above that number, then you could start talking about things like budgeting. Then you could start talking about things like saving money. Because once you have that like $20,000 a month, right, now you could save $10,000 and live comfortably off $10,000. If you're making $5,000 a month, how are you going to survive on $5,000 a month?
Totally.
Especially someplace here like Florida, like Miami. It's difficult. Like living in any sort of high rise or anything, you're kind of already out of money by the time you pay your rent.
And what kind of quality of life is that?
Exactly.
You're trying to scavenge every dollar you have. You're not going to get rich that way. You can put money in a Roth IRA and the money can compound, but you're not going to see those millions till you're 50, 60 years old.
100%.
Versus taking risk. You know, there is a chance, of course, things go south.
Yeah, but the biggest risk is not taking any risk at all.
Completely, dude. I know you and I are gonna have such a good conversation, man.
Because the thing is, you can take a risk, but people say, "What if I fail?" And I always answer like, "You're already failing. What you plan on just staying in the same little place for the next 34 years of your life, and that's not considered failure to you? Like, if you live an unhappy life for the next 40 years." You don't even necessarily have to be unhappy, but you live a life that you know you don't want for the next 40 years. You don't consider that failing?
Totally, dude.
It's a slow death. It's a death by 1,000. What's it? It's a death by 1,000
concessions.
Death by 1,000. Like, I don't know. There's something that so like that. But a great example of this would be like
no, concessions wouldn't be.
There's like there's the frog. There's the frog thing. When you take a frog and you put him in boiling water, he just jumps out. It's too hot, right? But you take a frog in a pot of warm water, and then you heat it up to a boil. The frog will stay in there until it's dead. So the same applies to human beings. They don't realize they're being boiled alive very, very slowly. They're getting killed slowly. They're dying slowly. It's going to take 40, 50 years for them to realize it. But the fear of trying to get out stops them from ever getting out. So they kind of get stuck. I think it's the human condition, bro. It's sad.
No matter how many podcasts talk about this, because I think the conversation we're having, I love it. I can talk about it over and over and over again.
Right.
But people have heard this, right? What we're saying isn't necessarily new. Hopefully we can articulate it in a way that maybe resonates more with the particular people that are listening. Risk is a difficult thing, you know? And I think there is always only going to be a small percentage of people that are willing to do it. And I think for them, and I speak for myself, I can say this very confidently for myself, I am much more afraid of not doing it.
Yeah.
The fear for me of being a grandfather sitting in my chair and my little granddaughter is saying, well, Grandpa, didn't you want to do XYZ? You know, what are things you wish you did? Do you have any regrets? I don't want to be that grandpa. I want to be that old guy sitting in my rocking chair saying, I did A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they were hard, but I succeeded at them, and I am the happiest fucking dude. And now I can give those advices to my children and grandchildren, and hopefully even great grandchildren, and I can say it with this huge grin because there's a long story to tell. I can sit, they're all sitting there in front of me. I envision this, man. I envision this. And this is why I went to the army. This is why I started my podcast. This is why I'm a realtor. This is why I'm so determined to work for myself and do what I'm doing at a high level.
And there's a big difference between age and wisdom. I think everyone wants wisdom. I think that's wisdom. Being able to pass down all of this experience, like at the end of your life.
Because I don't want to give advice, not to cut you off, but I don't want to give advice. There's so many people that give advice but haven't done it.
I agree.
Everyone is like that, dude.
Agree.
Like with my podcast, so many people are like, well, maybe if you did this and maybe if you did that. It's like, go do it yourself.
That's a great example, right? Like I always say, I don't take financial advice from anyone broker than me.
Right.
Anyone poorer than me. And people say, oh, you're arrogant. Why would you need to humble yourself? God could take it away. Listen, I agree. But at the same time, like, I'll still listen. I'm not arrogant if I'm going to listen to someone with more money. In fact, I pay people with more money to tell me what to do with my money. Right? But I'm not going to listen to someone with less money than me teach me how to make money or tell me what to do with my money when they've never been able to do it. I think the same applies to the podcast. It's like, oh, you should do this with your podcast or do this. And it's like, well, do you have a podcast? Right. Like, I'm sure if Joe Rogan said, hey, you should do this, you would say.
I would listen.
Yeah, you would say, that's a great idea.
But you know what's funny, dude? I could also, if Joe Rogan said something I vehemently disagreed with, I would say, hey, man, I disagree. I'm like that. I'm just.
Yeah.
And I highly doubt I would, though. I highly doubt I would disagree with the vast majority of things. I'm talking about podcast advice specifically. Right. Yeah, man. That's a big thing. Like a lot of entrepreneurs that I follow that are massively successful say, take advice from people that are doing what you're doing at a higher level and disregard most of the advices from people that are not.
We live in like an attention economy. So now it's literally you're being bombarded with 100 different things every single day. My wife is susceptible to it. So my wife, she's on like TikTok or Instagram Reels. And literally every week she'll come to me and she'll be like, babe, did you hear that we should stop eating apples? I'm like, okay, what's it going to be next week? And then next week it's like, did you hear that there's bugs in grapes? And I'm like, if you live on social media, you just have to like do nothing. You can't even have air. You can't even breathe air anymore,
bro. Everything's cancerous. Blah blah blah. You
can't eat any food. No salt. No sugar. You want to just breathe? You want to have air for dinner? Like, and I think that's what happens with the world we live in. So, and the same applies to entrepreneurial advice. Entrepreneurial advice, it becomes like, this is the best business. No, this is the best business. Real estate's the best way to make money. Advertising's the best way to make money. And it just becomes this like shouting match across social media. And the people that are caught in the middle, they end up like, I don't know what to do. And they get stuck with this like paralysis almost.
Analysis paralysis. I think that's most people's issues. Because also most people, here's a big one that I've realized. Most people would rather give advice because they can then live vicariously through you. And even more so, they feel like they're taking action because they're giving you advice on your thing.
And then they also feel like they did the thing.
That's what I'm saying.
So if someone were to say, oh, do this for your podcast, you were to do it and it would be successful, it doesn't even relate to them. Maybe you were planning on doing it already, but they could say,
see, that's because of the advice.
I could do it if I wanted to. I just don't want to do it. He did it and look, it worked for him. That's 100% it.
Yeah.
But I think we live in a place where it's like people want to feel better about themselves. I think you see it everywhere, across every single. They want to feel better about themselves without necessarily having to earn it. And I think that's kind of the world we've built, right? Because society has gotten so far ahead that everyone's so comfortable, right? And you have immediate dopamine release with like Netflix or video games or porn. You have or fast food. Like these are all immediate dopamine release where people don't have to work for this stuff.
Right.
And in the past, human beings have always had to work for these specific things. You want food? Go hunt. Go find it. Right?
I feel like you would be a very fun person to like spear a deer with.
Spear a deer.
Like if you and I were in Wyoming.
I love stuff like that. It's weird. I feel bad for the animals, but not if I know like
no.
It's
well, you
okay.
eat it afterwards.
Yeah, see, that's different. I could do that.
You want to do that? We'll just go to bumblefuck nowhere and just
spear a deer.
Yeah. Well, deer spearing.
Spear is scary because like, what if it doesn't die? Then I feel bad. Also,
right, so we'll shoot it.
That's fair. That's easier.
I hope your wife's not gonna hate me for this.
What? No, she's okay.
Yeah. No, we'll eat it. Mrs. Lacad will eat it afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I think we live in a time and place where people feel like they're entitled to feeling good without working for it.
But that's, you know what though? Part of me likes that because it makes things so much less competitive.
Yeah, but life is competitive.
What I mean by that is if everybody has instant gratification and I'm able to wait things out, then there's an upside. Because if most people, you get what I'm saying? If most people don't have the fortitude to say, this might take me 5-10 years,
Right.
but I have enough belief in myself to just drill at it every day, not knowing if it'll even fucking work, most people won't do that, then that's an advantage. Even if there's...
I love what you're saying here. Continue though, but yeah, because I have
that's pretty much it. Yeah.
I tweeted this the other day. This is something I strongly believe in, right? Because people always ask me, like, what is the secret to making money? Because that's what my brand on the internet is about. Mm-hmm. What's your secret to making money? And I could give you advice. So there's some high level advice I can give, right? But the best advice that anyone can implement is just to attack something relentlessly. Because literally, we live in a world where if you were to attack something relentlessly, you're going to get success no matter what. It doesn't matter what it is. I really love how you said, like, this podcast, I've been doing it for 4 years. I have 4,000 subscribers. I'm like, that's great. But you also have episodes. But you're slamming away at it until eventually something's going to break.
You know what's great?
It's either you break or the internet breaks and your podcast is one of the biggest podcasts in the world.
But you know what's great? It took me, I think, about 2 years to even get to the 1,000 mark. Like, as it grows faster.
Right.
That's the beautiful part. I think the 10K mark is really the threshold in any social media, a social media platform where people kind of take notice, that 5-figure mark. And it's not a large number, but I think that's when people start to say, oh, okay, this is a somebody to some level. But regardless of that, accumulating bigger names allows you to get even bigger names. Everything compounds. Yeah. And so that earlier stage, you're crawling through the mud. And nobody really knows, and some people recognize you, and some people know who you are, but if I have a bigger purpose for it, and I'm willing to see it through for the long haul, I don't even think about it. It's like, okay, next. Who's next? Who are we talking to next week?
Yeah, and as long as, like I said, as long as you just keep attacking, something will break.
Right.
And it's either you break through or it breaks you.
Right.
So that's the way I look at it. And it happens with any business. You do enough things, like, I tell myself whenever I do anything, I just try every little thing we can do. Right? I'm in advertising, so we launch a lot of ads. People say, hey, do you think this ad's going to work? And my answer is always like, I don't know, let's just try it. It's never going to be like this. Like, I hate when people look at an ad or a piece of content and they do this over-analysis. They say, oh, it's not perfect yet. I don't know what we're going to do. And then they just stay and they waste their time trying to figure something out. When in reality, they should have just tested it. No, it didn't work. Test another thing. Just do 100 things. If you can do 100 things, launch 100 ads, do 100 podcasts, drop 100 pieces of content, something is going to work. Something is going to break. Mm-hmm. You're going to break through. I think that's the most dummy-proof advice for anyone that wants to be successful. That's anything is just to keep slamming away at it.
I've realized that across the board, every single high-level entrepreneur, Alex Hormozi, a big fan of him. Like he makes this statement all the time, being consistent and doing it for a long time. Mm-hmm. But they all, Patrick Bet-David, Alex Hormozi, Cody Sanchez, there's a bunch of them that really stress being relentlessly consistent, just doing it over and over and over and over and over and over. It's such, people overlook it. They don't understand that it's really that simple, because unless you're completely oblivious to everything around you, you're going to get a little bit better every single day. And then there are some days where you just have there's a massive learning curve, but you're going to keep getting better until you are an expert at that.
And then at some point it becomes automatic. So it doesn't require effort anymore.
You're an autopilot, yeah.
Yeah, so people always look at these high performers, right? I look at some of these high performers that are absolute machines. Mm-hmm. Some of the entrepreneurs you mentioned, right? My employees, they look at me and they're like, yo, I don't know how you do this. I came into the office yesterday, 9 o'clock, left at 11. Right, and I was there for 14 hours, and they're like, "Dude, like, you're not tired? You don't like do this?" I'm like, "No, I love this. I genuinely do." But it's also kind of like my life now at this point. Like, this is what my life has been for the past 2 or 3 years. So I don't even. To you, it might be crazy, but to me, it's second nature. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like if you play basketball against like Steph Curry and you're having a 3-point shootout. It's so automatic to him that he just does it. He doesn't think, he just does it. Because of all that repetition, all that consistency. Where someone that might be doing it for the first time, it's extremely difficult. I think the more you do it, the better you get very, very quickly.
You become it's autopilot. It's like driving. You drive.
Is that how you, let me ask you, is this how you feel about this podcast? Do you feel like you kind of like autopilot, not autopilot
100%.
necessarily, but like cool, this is my system. Boom,
Bro,
boom,
it's
boom.
crazy how people I'm not saying I get this every day, but it happened a nice amount since I started, and it still happens fairly often. Is friends of mine or people I meet go, how much do you prepare for it? Like, do you get nervous when you hop? I'm like, I can talk to anybody at this point. Now, I might, say I had Donald Trump on the show, would I really want to prepare myself? Sure. But would I be nervous? I can tell you very confidently, absolutely not.
Yeah.
If you were Donald sitting right there, I would be chilling. I would literally sit like this. Maybe I'd put on a button-down shirt. I mean, maybe, I don't say he wouldn't give a shit. I can wear this.
Yeah, I don't think he would.
He's so cool, he wouldn't care.
Yeah.
But I would sit exactly like this. I wouldn't be like,
So Donald, what do you think what do you think will be the turnout between you and Kamala? Do you think you have a chance?
no, I'd be like, what's up, dude?
Yeah, I think that's what makes you good at this. I think that's why you like this also. Because people tend to like the things they're good at also.
Totally.
Yeah.
Thank God, man. I have a knack for it. I've always been a schmoozer.
Do you think you're curious? Is that why you like to do podcasts? Because I think that's probably
One of the primary. I'm a super curious guy. Yes, I
Yeah.
ask a lot of questions. I always want. I'm a sponge of knowledge. I always want to learn things. The things that I watch are rarely movies, TV. I'm watching podcasts. I'm watching documentaries. I like to learn. If it's not teaching me something, and I don't really enjoy it so much anymore. And I used to watch movies and TV when I was younger. Very seldomly do I do it now. I don't watch sport. I don't follow sports. I watch UFC on occasion. I'm not crazy. I don't watch it all the time. But no, dude, I didn't even really grow. The only thing I watched religiously for a couple of years when I was younger was basketball. That was and I used to love playing it when I was younger. But I don't watch a single sport.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I try to. I don't know. I think so. I do watch sports. I don't watch every single sport. I think there's people that like out there that it's crazy. How do you watch 82 basketball games?
Crazy.
For your team? That's insane, right? Like, get a life. But also, I do enjoy sports because I like this competitive aspect. So I'm a big LeBron James fan. I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, and I love like studying these guys because they have like this they're wired differently. Where they could make, like, for LeBron to maintain, we talk about, like, hey, you've been doing podcasts for 4 years, right? LeBron has been playing premium basketball, top of the world, like, one of the best players in the world, basketball for the past 20 years, 21 years. How do you not get tired of it at that point?
It's insane.
Because and, like, it's like you, and going into the gym, getting the shots up, doing the season, it's a lot of work. Like, and he's a billionaire at this point. How do you not get tired of that? And just say, you know what, I'm good with this. Instead, he's still playing at the highest level.
I think some people just want to be the best. And when they want to be the best, you can't stop them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the hardest worker in the world. There's always going to be a harder worker. And I don't necessarily need to be the hardest worker on planet Earth. I know I will probably never work as hard as Elon Musk.
Right.
And that's okay with me. I don't, and you might see it differently. I personally don't have a goal of being a billionaire. If it happens, fine. That's not a goal of mine, and it probably won't be. I just want to do what I love.
Yeah.
And I want to do it at a very high level. And I absolutely want to be extremely successful. So I can tell myself I was able to, so I can put it in anyone's face who doubted me.
Yeah.
All these things. But I'm very competitive, and I love accomplishments. I get such a high from accomplishing things.
Right.
I can't get enough, dude. I can't get enough of it. I do want to get into more of your company. I want to give the listeners more information about your business and how you run it and what it's all about. Because I love this talk. I can talk to you about for for hours, but I want to give you the opportunity to just talk about it.
Yeah. So I got my start with an advertising agency. I had an ad agency. It was just something I was really interested in. I like people, and when at bare bones, advertising is just psychology, right? Advertising, it's like what can you show someone to get them to purchase a product? And at the time, I was a broke kid, so I didn't have any of my own businesses. I didn't have any of my own products, so I was just advertising for other businesses. That's all I could do, and specifically through the channel of social media, because when I was 19, 20, that's when social media really started to pick up. So my first business was an ad agency. And we essentially ran ads for businesses very successfully. That's how I made my first $1 million. And then from there, I just started to think about it. I'm like, I'm helping all these other businesses make money. Why don't I just do it for myself? Because people would always say that if you're so good at marketing, why don't you market your own business? And the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? They're right. I should just do this. So I started having my own businesses. I started a supplement company. I started a software company. Now I have a consulting firm.
Supplement company. So you sell all of it? Creatine, whey protein, all that?
No. It's strictly just nootropics, like focus nootropics.
Okay.
Just because it's something I would have needed. I try to stay away from businesses that I don't actually use. I'll only launch businesses that I know a lot about or something I genuinely need. But yeah, so I launched these businesses, advertise for myself now, and we still have the advertising agency, but at the same time, it's kind of mixed in with the consulting firm now, because if businesses want us to help them, we want to help them from all fronts. Because I got the business experience. I did the advertising, learned the advertising side, started my own businesses, built those up, learned all the other sides of it. So I feel like now I'm versed enough that I can handle, so now I feel like we can handle every part of the business. So, I don't know. I love advertising. I love business. It's like a game to me, and it's a game that I'm good at. And in the same way, like you said, stuff that you're good at, you like it. I genuinely love it.
You mentioned that you were working for someone else, and then you switched, and you kind of started your own thing.
Right.
What did you learn from the other company that you were able to bring into your own business?
Well, the thing is, I was advertising for other companies.
Right.
I was already an ad agency, so it was still kind of my business.
Okay,
Yeah.
So it was kind of your own thing.
It was still kind of my business, but I was advertising for clients specifically. Dealing with clients is a little bit difficult sometimes because you don't really have control of the business. I could think something's good and they could not like it, and then they scrap the idea, even though I feel like it could have been better. And I'm stubborn in a way where if I think something's right, and remember how you said, if me and Joe Rogan disagreed?
I'm like that also, by the way.
I'm the same way, but it's difficult in a business sense because there's money involved, right? And it's like if it's their money and they're paying me,
You have to do what they want.
Exactly.
And that's why when you started on your own, you get to say, now I have the opportunity to see if my way works.
Yeah, I said, you could say, fuck it, I'm going to do it myself.
Right.
I'll literally go and do it myself, and then sure enough, it worked out for me. I think that's one character trait that could be a bad character trait about myself, but it's also good because it allowed me to do stuff like that.
You know what though? It's only good when it fucking works.
Yeah.
When it doesn't work, you were wrong.
If I would have fallen on my face, people would look at me and laugh.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But I tell people this all the time. It's like they say, "Oh, when you fail, you're gonna laugh." I say, "No, they're not. When you fail, no one's even gonna care because no one's gonna know who you are.
Right.
You're insignificant. Like human beings, we overestimate our significance in the world.
Totally.
We're not that significant, man. No one cares. You might think something's super embarrassing. If someone sees it, sure, they might laugh for 30 minutes and remember you for an hour. But after that, they forget about you completely.
Nobody really gives a shit. I had a funny story, actually. I don't know why this story comes to mind, but I figured it'd be a good one. I'm in the mall in Brooklyn when I'm maybe 17. I'm with two of my buddies. And we're waiting, I think, in H&M, my two buddies and I, to buy some stuff. And there were these two girls waiting in front of us. My buddy farted, and it was horrible.
Oh no!
Horrible, right? What does he do? This brilliant asshole blames it on me.
That's something kids do.
And I stupidly just didn't have a good response. I didn't play it off well. I should have just played it off nonchalant because it wasn't me, it was him.
Yeah.
But it was, it was terrible. Okay. And these two girls in front of us thought it was me, and I started blushing. And it was so embarrassing. But in retrospect, who gives a damn? I should have just leaned into it and made it
Did you ever see those girls ever again?
Yeah, well, then about 30 minutes later, we saw them on another floor, and they're like, that's the guy who farted. It was so
Well, after that day, did you see them ever again?
No.
Yeah, so it's
No, now if it happened, I just would have... I either would have said, it wasn't actually me, and if the girls were like, oh, sure, I'd have been like, listen, I had a lot of chili.
Right.
And I should have warned you. I'm sorry. I would have, I would have just played into it because at that point, what difference does it make? But I used that stupid story to give you more of that context. Yeah, no one really gives a shit, dude.
People overestimate their importance. Like I said, they're gonna be gone. No one's gonna remember anything that you did.
Right.
So you might as well live life like it's a video game. Just do whatever you want. Because if you succeed, people will remember you. But if you fail, they won't.
Right.
And if you don't do anything, they won't either. So you have one opportunity to get remembered, might as well take it.
Sure.
You know, that's the way I view it. So that's why I love business. That's why I love content. That's why I love anything that other people can see or impact other people's lives, because it's a lot of fun, but I also feel like I'm doing something good.
Totally. I resonate. I resonate with that completely. What would you say, because clearly you work with, I have no doubt you work with a lot of sales companies.
Right.
Say someone like me who's a real estate agent, what could your company provide? How could you scale a real estate business, a sales business?
That's a great question, because we get a lot of that, right? There's a lot of real estate agents, insurance agents.
I'm thinking about my real estate business in terms of your company.
There's a lot of like real estate agents. There's a lot of insurance agents. And a big part of it is just getting some sort of people to find out about you. Because right now, how do you find your clients?
Primarily cold calling.
You're calling them.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be much easier if they called you?
Totally.
And what are your type of clients?
Sellers primarily.
Sellers.
The age varies. Usually locals, sometimes people from New York. I'm Jewish, so my clients at least 50% of the time tend to be Jewish, or more than that.
So
word of mouth.
The way I would look at it, right? Let's say I'm in your position. Let's say you were to make a YouTube video that says like common questions about selling your house. Like thinking about selling your house, here's what you should know. Right? That's just what comes off the top of my head. Now people that are looking to sell their house, they see that, they're like, oh, I'm thinking about selling my house. Like, what should I know? And then they go through this entire thing. You obviously make the video. And then you would then say, hey, if you want help with this stuff, don't worry, I'm your guy. Hit me up, call me, text me, email me, whatever, however you want to get contacted.
It's so interesting, because I think that's a great strategy, but I noticed that some of the best agents in South Florida, they don't do that.
But the thing is, those people have such what happens with these agents is they're aged in, or they have these connections, so it's a lot of word of mouth. So typically, unless you have that already, it's going to be hard to build that up. Right? They're not doing any, do you know how they're getting their clients?
Well, no, a nice amount of them do have solid Instagrams, but what they do primarily is they just take very professional listing videos. So what I mean is they have a $10 million house they listed, they do a very professional video, they introduce the house, they're also, most of them are good looking, which is a big factor.
Okay.
And they have a very nice video. They show the sale, they might do like a closing video. Oh, we just closed this house on 1, 2, 3.
So you're thinking about how you would advertise the house to sell?
No, what I mean by that is they seem to get business from their current business. They prove to their followers that they can handle these kinds of sales in the luxury market. They build a reputation for themselves. They build a sizable following. Anywhere from 10 to 30,000 followers is what the average of the following of these agents have. Then you have some of them have more followers than that, but typically they have anywhere from 10 to 30. Some of them, like my 2 brokers, they have a very small following, and they're some of the best in South Florida.
Yeah.
And they have very simple Instagrams. They just know the market exceptionally well, and they work incredibly hard. They're just always working. And that's,
I think for any sort of business, real estate, insurance, anything like this, if you can get enough eyeballs on you, you're going to have a lot of business, right? So you said with these people, they might not have a following. How are they getting clients? Is it cold calls? How are people finding out about them? I guess is my question.
I know my brokers specifically, they made cold calls in their earlier years, and they get their business from word of mouth. They do a very good job. They know the market very well. That's the thing. They know their market.
I think if you build a big enough business, eventually you'll get people through word of mouth. But when it comes to building that, though, I think that's the hardest part.
For me, the podcast is definitely one of those tools. It has, it has there are different ways for me to make money from the podcast, such as, most real estate agents, if they do a podcast, it's a very cliche real estate podcast.
Yeah.
Only people interested in real estate are listening to it. They seldomly put out content. I know very few big real estate podcasts, especially real estate agent podcasts. They're usually just not big. Good. People aren't really tuning into them. And I decided to not do it that way. I want people because I want people to know about me as a person. What am I interested in? What are the topics I'm into? Who are the guests I'm having on? So I want to be able to sit down with intelligent, successful, well-known people who can eventually become clients too, hopefully.
Right.
Who I can do business with, whether it be real estate or a different business venture. We connect well. We sit down for an hour or two, sometimes longer, and we have a great time. We get to know each other, and we see where we're compatible. And maybe you know something I don't, or I know something you don't, and or maybe I know somebody that can help you. You know someone who can help me. Whatever the case is, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
The connections I've built through this
Podcast.
this thing that I've created out of thin air 4 years ago,
Right.
and it's awesome.
Isn't that cool that you can just make something out of thin air? This wouldn't have existed had you not started or done any of the things.
I got to give a shout out to my buddy Yoni because he was definitely a part of that. He probably wouldn't take any credit. He's a super humble guy. But I was sitting down with him on the couch like this, and I was like, dude, I love talking to people. I can talk to anyone, and I love learning things from them.
Right.
I'm thinking of starting a podcast. He's like, dude, you should totally do it. He's like, go get the equipment and fucking do it. I was like, maybe a week later, I didn't hesitate with it. Maybe a week or two later, I went to, have you heard of B&H?
No.
A very popular electronics store. They have
Okay.
celebrities going in there. It's a very, very, how would I say, the departments have a professional that knows everything about each particular thing. They have
Oh,
a
nice.
camera section has a guy who knows everything about cameras.
Very nice.
Microphone area has a girl who knows everything about mics, and you go to each department and they can answer any question from A to Z. And you can even make an appointment to sit down with somebody. Like I made an appointment with a production guy, and he asked me what my budget was at the time, asked me what I was looking to do, and he just gave me everything. He walked me to each department. I had such, B&H is, you guys are next level.
What's the ultimate goal for this podcast?
I love when the questions get thrown at me. It's
No,
awesome.
I'm just curious, bro. Because
Yeah.
like, I feel like I've met you, and it seems like you really, really love this thing. So I'm just curious what the ultimate goal is with it, and like how you envision it.
Okay. I love this question because there's so many things. I'll just verbally vomit it because there's so many things. I want to have the kind of studio that makes me feel like $1 million, right? So I mentioned off the show the rustic kind of man cave, cigar lounge kind of thing, where I knew that only a couple of years ago I started from nothing and created this entire thing. So I definitely want to build the studio. I want to build up an incredible network of successful people that I also get along with on a friendly level. I want to make a ton of money doing it. I mean, there's so many things.
Podcast is definitely the best outlet for that.
Money from YouTube revenue is probably not going to be a primary source of income, but that's one little thing. Working with companies. Say I have a friend that does jewelry. Hopefully my channel gets big enough and we'll collaborate. We're already talking about it. Different companies that I connect with, say Adidas, Nike, I like them. Say they theoretically were paying me a few G's an ad. I mean, there's so many avenues, dude. There's just so many things that it can do. And even if the podcast isn't directly bringing me an enormous amount of money, again, it's the connections that I can make that I can take into other things.
Yeah.
So say I meet it can be you or it can be anybody that we have a great discussion for 2 hours and they say, hey man, I'm looking to buy a $5 million house.
Right.
Can you help me? Hey, my friend wants to buy a $6 million house. Can you help him?
Yeah.
Sure. Right.
It is a great way to meet people. 100%.
So that's the, I guess the best answer I can give you.
No, I love it, man. I love it. I think when people do stuff like this, I have a lot of respect for it, right? Because it's a very unconventional path, but it's something you love, so you do it. Because I think I took a really unconventional path, and I feel like I've been judged for it my entire life. So to see other people doing it, it almost gives me like a sense of belonging, because like they understand from that like perspective.
We're kind of nuts, bro. Like we're kind of nuts. Most people look at us and they're like, why don't you just do the normal safe thing? But what I think is it brings me to this point that Patrick Bet-David said. He said, don't be childish, be childlike. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, but if you could elaborate.
Sure. So childish would be immature. Childlike is children are not afraid to look stupid. Children are not afraid to do the things that they want to do because they want to do them, right?
Right.
And if you are childlike not childlike in terms of everyday things necessarily, but childlike in going after your pursuits, you don't necessarily have this worldview like most people do of, yeah, I'm going to start a podcast that I'm going to do at 26, still continue to do at 30 years old, and actually be delusional enough to think it's actually going to work.
I love this exact topic because I think what happens is, like, as children, I talk about it a lot. As children, we have like grandiose views of the world, and we have big dreams.
Because the world hasn't knocked us down yet. So
and over time, society sucks the life out of you, and it's terrible. So when you see someone that has that still, it's like incredible to see, right? It makes you happy.
Yeah.
It's like contagious.
I love this. I love it. Keep going, right?
Because when you ask a kid, like a 6-year-old, you ask a kid, you say, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And they say, like, "I want to be Spider-Man. I want to be a superhero." I'm like, cool. Like, it's so happy, right? Or I remember even as kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? All the kids say, doctor, I want to be a pilot, I want to be a firefighter, I want to do this, I want to do that, veterinarian, right? They say all these cool things. And then the older you get, you ask a college kid the same thing, what do you want to be? And they say, oh, I don't know, maybe like a secretary. Oh, I'm in school for, I don't know, business. But they don't know what they're doing. Right, and then most of the time they end up at jobs they hate. So it's like, it sucks that, like, you see someone at 6 years old, they want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an inventor or a superhero, and then at 23 they're essentially like, maybe I get a job at this company that pays me 50 grand a year and it helps me pay the bills. It's like, to see that difference in only a span of 17 years, like, how do you get that much life taken, like life sucked out of you? It's a crazy thing to me when I see it. It's like sad to see, you know?
Yeah, that's the result of getting your ass handed to you by life so many times, where, especially when you have tried to venture out into that unknown and life keeps kicking you down, at some point most people have enough. It hits too hard.
So you say life, I say society. But because I think the difference is, when you try to do something as might not be conventional, people will put these negative thoughts into your head. Hey, I want to be a doctor. And then the first thing you hear, right, is you say you want to be like, oh, you sure it's hard? You want to be in medical school?
All the debt. Yeah.
Oh, you want to take all this debt? They just put that in your head. It's crazy to me. And anytime someone says any sort of big dream, I always used to tell people, and I know this firsthand, I always used to say, I want to be a millionaire. And then they wouldn't even say, oh, that's like awesome. Like tell me more. Instead they laugh. They say, ha, no, but really, what do you want to do? And they can't even fathom it, right? They can't even think about it. When you see anyone, like, you see these kids that are 6 years old and like they have these big dreams, I think it works because when they're kids, they say, you can do it. Little Tommy, little Johnny, you can do it. But then as they get older, they say, oh, no, seriously, what do you want to do? Oh, you don't want to get just like a stable job? You don't want to do this? They almost like discourage them, and society like almost beats them down for wanting to do something great or be different. They always say, I hate the advice, be realistic. It's the worst advice.
Oh my God.
Be realistic.
So it's so bad.
No one that was ever great ever thought to be realistic.
100%.
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
Speaking of this, I plan on going on Joe Rogan to talk about Israel-Palestine, and I believe 100% eventually it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And to me, it's not even a crazy thought to me.
What would be really cool is if you have a clip like this when that happens. Because I tell people this all the time. Like, I have things that I have now, but I also said this back in like 2015. And I looked like a crazy person back then. They thought I was insane, right? There's a thing on my Twitter. I said, I'm gonna retire from Twitter. It was like 2016. I'm never gonna tweet again until I'm on Forbes. And then people were like, oh, this guy's gone for good. They thought I was gonna be gone forever. And then sure enough, I come back 4 years later. I'm back, bitches.
Dope.
Here's the link to the Forbes article.
So dope, dude. I saw you on your website. You were on Forbes, yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's just one of the best feelings in the world, because it's like, I had to do that. It took me 4 years to do it, but I did it, and I have the receipts to prove it. So I think that, like, how you were going back to achievement or proving people wrong. I love the idea of proving people wrong. I love the idea of like people thinking I can't do it, and I go do
You know
it.
what the thing is also? I fucking love this so much. Even better than arguing their doubts, meaning when they doubt you, saying, "Oh yeah, well I'll show you." You just say, "Okay,"
Yeah.
and then you go and do it, and you don't even say anything necessarily. You don't even have to show them proof.
I'm petty. I'll text everyone. I'm super petty. If someone tells me I can't do it, I'll text them. 3 years later, I'll note all of their names on a spreadsheet and come back to it 4 years
fucking
later.
awesome.
Told you, bitch. that's like, that drives me.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not even in like a hurtful way. It's almost just like, more so I could be like, I know I could do it. You didn't, but it's okay.
No,
Now
you
know.
probably do want to kind of kick them in the teeth a little bit.
Yeah, so that's probably one of the best like motivators for me because it feels good. I tell people like now that I have a little bit of money, a little bit of success, when I say stuff, people actually believe me. So the adversity's kind of gone and it's kind of slowed me down a little bit. I don't feel as ferocious as I used to be, because before they would say you can't do it. I'd be like okay, and I just
You
grind.
had a chip on your shoulder.
Now they say, oh, I want to make $100 million, and people look at me, they say, not that unrealistic, and I'm like, I don't have that like adversity anymore, you know. So
Yeah, people definitely will take your advice more when you've done what, like if you do what you set out to do and you actually did it. People are like, well, I can't really talk shit. He's actually done it.
Yeah, so now I'm kind of like, man, how do I get more of this like adversity? How do I get more of this like shit talk? I have to say something crazy, but I don't want to say anything that I actually don't believe in, though. That's
Maybe
the thing.
it's not a monetary thing. Maybe if you went and said, I'm going to go climb Mount Everest, you might have some doubts.
Oh no, I don't genuinely believe that though.
What?
I think I would climb Mount Everest,
Oh,
but I think like back then, I genuinely believed I would become a millionaire, and no one else did. And I'm like, I'm serious, guys. I can't believe you don't believe me. And I'm like, sure, okay. Now it's kind of like I don't know what else I would want to accomplish that I could broadcast that's like crazy far fetched that I could dedicate myself to. So I think that's like one of the issues when
That's a good. You know what though? As much as I hear where you're coming from, that's a good problem to have.
It is a good
The
problem
fact
to
that
have.
people at this point don't really doubt you because you proved it. I mean, I guess that they're just now you're at the point where, which is a great place to be, where you kind of just have to find your own ways of taking yourself to the next level.
I think that's why one thing I've noticed in just my
I was about to
personal
ask.
life.
Yeah, I guess this is the answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I've noticed is I have worked 100 times harder ever since I had my daughter. I think everyone should have kids. I'm a big believer in that everyone should have kids, just because like it's a different type of motivation. Because now I don't need really doubters to push me as much, because I could look at her and like, you know, I'm doing this for you now, you know. And then same thing with my grandchildren, because eventually she's gonna have kids, and then she's gonna be able to tell her kids like, you know, your grandfather's the reason that we have all of this stuff. It's like a really cool thing that crosses my mind a lot. Like the legacy becomes bigger because I have a child. So I tell my wife all the time, I want like 100 kids. Obviously that's unrealistic. So she hates that when I say that, because she thinks I'm gonna have them with other women. So like I say like, okay, fine, like 10. But she still thinks it's unrealistic. But we'll see how she feels about it. Because yeah, I want as many kids as possible. It's like it's just amazing, bro.
You want to,
and they're so
legacy.
like pure and like, and this coming from a new dad, and every parent.
How old's your little one now?
6 months.
Daughter, right?
Daughter,
Right.
yeah. So every parent can relate to this. It's like one of the most amazing feelings in the world, because it's like they're so pure. And you know, like just circling back here, how we talked about like when a kid enters the world and they're so pure and they have all this light in their eyes, like they're born like that. So for me as a parent, I think my job is to make sure that life or society doesn't take that away from her, you know, because I feel like a lot of children, a lot of people in general, society will take that from them to the point where they're 23 years old and now they want to work some office job that they hate.
You know, I gotta say, just to interject, my grandmother was not an entrepreneur. She was not a big risk taker, but she instilled confidence. She didn't necessarily instill an entrepreneurial mindset. She was very safe, the saving money type, the stay in your lane, make sure you have what you need, yada yada. But one thing she always said to me was, always believe in yourself. You can do whatever you set your mind to. And even if she didn't necessarily practice that in her own life, she really instilled that in me. And so it took me stepping out of my comfort zone to realize if I want anything big to happen, I'm going to need to take risks. But that confidence she instilled in me was a really, really big factor.
No, that's
And
great.
I think richer parents, wealthier parents, a lot of the time they instill that confidence in their kids, where poorer parents don't necessarily do that. And that's a
This is
huge thing.
super valid.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, I did martial arts. I wanted to compete in a tournament, and my mom, I told her I wanted to compete. She would be like, "You're gonna get beat up. Why would you do that?" Whereas a supportive parent, I feel like would have, and she didn't do it. And here's the thing: I don't blame her for that because she was just doing it to protect me. Because as a mother, she doesn't want her son to get hurt. I think a parent that's richer in here, mindset wise, they would have said, "Hey, you can do it. Let's do it. What do I need to do to help you do it? Let's train. Let's do this. Let's practice." But my mom was like, "Why would you do it? You're gonna get beat up." It was like I can't imagine myself telling my daughter that to something. Hey, Dad, I want to play soccer. I want to play volleyball. I want to play basketball. I can't imagine saying, "Oh, you're gonna be bad at this." Like, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. So I think your grandmother did something amazing there, where she said you could do whatever you set your mind to.
Yeah. And even, for example, with the military, I know that she was nervous about me going. All she did was support it.
So tell me that you said that you when you were in the military, yeah.
Oh, no, I wasn't even trying to like bring that into the thing, but if you want, we can talk about it.
Yeah, I'm actually curious because it seems like this is one of your things. So like, I would love to hear it. So you went to the military, and then this is in New York.
Well, no, I went to the military in Israel.
You went to the Israeli military,
Right.
How does that work? So if you were from New York, you enlisted in the.
If you're Jewish, you can join that
Okay.
military. Yeah, you can be a Jewish.
And how old were you when you did this?
I went there at 21. I drafted at 22.
Okay. So I want you to educate me on this Israel-Palestine thing then, because I
It's
don't.
like a huge. It's so funny, guys. Like I feel like some of my listeners are like, "Oh wow, like nice move shifting into it." I only brought it up as an example, as an extreme example.
Well, no, because I want to hear, because I'm the uninformed majority.
Yeah, no. If you wanted to discuss
I'm the uninformed majority. This is from my base of knowledge. I try to learn as much as I can about everything. Right? Israel-Palestine. Some people say it goes back way back, but if we start, I think for me, where I understand, like World War II, after World War II, there was an agreement between like the Allied forces, United States, and everyone else that gave like part of like that split the land into two, correct? Jewish, and then there was like Israel and Palestine.
There were a few opportunities to do this. Truthfully, the Balfour Declaration, which I believe was agreed on, and well, when I say agreed on, both the Arabs and Jews didn't agree to it, but the Balfour Declaration was set in place in 1917. It was proposed, at least, let's say it was proposed. Jordan was supposed to be the Palestinian state, what was going to be the Palestinian state, and what's now Israel was supposed to be the Jewish state. That wasn't agreed upon by the Arabs, so then now Jordan is actually 70% Palestinian. They're just refugees, and many of them anyway. And then there was another agreement which would split Israel, what was known as the British Mandate of Palestine, and the Arabs were going to get more of the land, and the part that was going to be Jewish was also going to have a 40% Arab population, if you're following what I'm saying. So the Jewish side was smaller, and almost half of that side was going to have Arabs in it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the vast majority of that land was going to have Arabs in it. Nonetheless, Arabs weren't willing to agree on it. They said, listen, even though we didn't have an actual flag, country, government, etc., we don't want Jews to have any rulership in this land. We were invaded by multiple armies.
So this is where I was going with this, right? So there's pretty much like an agreement, and then the Arabs were the ones that like broke the agreement first.
Well, the agreement was never, there was no agreement.
So there was no
agreement.
Proposal.
The
Okay.
Jews accepted the proposal. The Arabs said no.
And then because the Arabs invaded, big countries like the United States backed the Jews.
Well, it depends on which war we're talking about, because there was no point in any of these wars where we had soldiers on the ground that helped us.
Well, I mean, like as far as like allied support, like
no. So I have to check before I make any claims, but I know that America did not help us with weapons in every war. And I have to.
But I mean,
Google
like,
it.
just the support. Like, when I say support, it doesn't have to be like necessarily financial or weapons, but like America was not supporting what was like, you know what I mean?
Okay. In 1947 and again on May 14th, 1948, the United States had offered de facto recognition of the Israeli Provisional Government, but during the war, the United States maintained an arms embargo against all belligerents. That means they did not provide weapons to Israel or the Arabs in the 1947 war.
So leading into now, right?
So there were plenty of
How does that lead into now?
It's very simple. It's not okay. When I say it's very simple,
This is this maybe explain where I'm wrong here. So it seems like it doesn't seem like Israel's at fault, but it does seem like Israel is over retaliating. And again, this is uninformed.
What does over retaliation mean? And please, by the way, dude, do not have any hesitation to be super critical. Don't worry about it. I'd prefer.
They're far bigger, have a lot more power.
What do you mean by far bigger?
As far as like support, I'm assuming financially. I'm assuming like resources. So it feels like an over retaliation. This is what I guess it would equate to.
I'm
like,
gonna blow your mind.
I would like to hear this. So let's say we're in a bar. I punch you in the face, and you come back and stab me. Right? It's like an over retaliation. So that's what that again. I don't know, so I don't want to get in trouble for anything I say. But that's what it sounds like, from my understanding, from what I read. It seems like they didn't start it, but they are over retaliating in a sense. Because
let me ask you a question. First of all, what are you understanding when you say over retaliation?
So
you're hearing, what are you hearing about in Gaza? So, right, kids are dying, 40,000 deaths. So, like, you're hearing those things, right? Let me ask you a question. You have a daughter. If somebody kidnapped your daughter, and God forbid, okay, let's put this horrible scenario into the picture so you understand. I don't know you. I barely know you, but
right.
knowing who you are from the short time, I already know the answer. But I'm going to ask you anyway. God forbid someone kidnaps your daughter, especially imagine your daughter is a teenager. Imagine she's 16 years old. Someone kidnaps her and says, maybe we'll give her back if your country gives us the prisoners that are locked up. You don't know what the hell's happening to her, but she's in a tunnel now. And your country's government, say the U.S., comes to you and says, hey, Rene, if you want your daughter back, we can't guarantee this, but the only possible way of ever seeing her again is if we kill 40,000 people, 100,000 people. And that we might still not be able to, but that's the only chance we'll have. What are you doing?
You say yes, obviously.
Homie, I would kill the entire... I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep it real. And anyone who's judging me looking at this would do the exact same thing, especially the mothers. Dude, you take a mother's child from her. I don't care if she's the sweetest woman in the world. She will turn the entire planet over to get her kid back.
Understood.
So let's be very clear about this. You made a decision. Hamas, the Palestinian militant group, made a decision to invade the country. They killed pretty much every civilian they could get their hands on. And they want to say that it's resistance and it's this and it's that. You made a decision to do what you did, and you took hundreds of hostages into your country, and you want to exchange them for Palestinians who, for the most part, committed terror attacks in Israel, and you want to make an exchange. You made a decision to hold them in tunnels, and now Israel is coming for you, and civilians are dying. You have the decision to make right now to free them, and you are choosing to hold on to them. This is your decision. And by making this decision, you're reaping the consequences. Because I can tell you now...
Is it only because they have hostages?
Yes.
Okay,
no, the truth is, it's the primary reason, because at the end of the day, they still killed an enormous amount of people. So we want to destroy this organization. This is a very deep discussion.
Yeah.
Truthfully, man, the reason for this conflict primarily lies in the unwillingness of a large percentage of the Arab world to accept Jewish rule in this piece of land. Because what's funny enough is that Islamically, the Quran acknowledges that God gave this land to the Jews. Whether you believe in God or not, you can be an atheist for all I care. But the reality is, in the Middle East, most people are religious people. They believe in scripture and all that. So you can't bring an atheist or agnostic point of view to this part of the world. It doesn't work that way. You're not going to convince people to not believe in these things. It's largely a religious war where they believe it has to be ruled by Muslims. We believe that the land we inherited this land. Jacob inherited this land, or it's Jacob and Ismail, right? Ismail, Arabs, Jews, Jacob. And the fundamental thing is they are not used to Jews ruling anything, because up until 1948, Jews were scattered around the world. We were minorities in other countries. And as soon as a country said, we're tired of you, you're too successful, or you're the cause of this, or you're the cause of that, they just sent us on our way somewhere else. And for the first time in a very, very, very long time, the Jews actually have power. They rule a country. They have a military. They have an economy and all these things. And there are people in the world that don't exactly like that. I'm not going to say it's as simple as this, but this is the crux of all the fighting. And it's not all Muslims, because Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Bahrain, Morocco, Jordan, Egypt, we have peace treaties with a large percentage of the Arab world at this point. But then there are countries that, not even necessarily the countries, but these militant groups in these countries are still set out in destroying the country because it's ruled by Jews. They might be okay with Jews living there under their rule, but they're not okay with living under our rule. And when I say there's 20% of the Israeli population is Arab Muslim. But that's inside of Israel proper. But you still have Gaza, which those Palestinians don't have Israeli citizenship. And many of them are still set on destroying Israel because they believe that we stole it from them, and they're on a mission to fight for it. And the problem is as the years go on, they get weaker, we get stronger, and they keep fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, and they're just sacrificing generation after generation.
I'm understanding this better. So this is very similar to then like the U.S. conflict in the Middle East as well, right? Where it's like there's terrorist organizations that the United States, after 9/11, they
I think it's a very different example.
Really? Okay.
Because that's, if you see Jews as a group of people that have no connection to the Middle East, then you'll see it as some colonial group from who knows where.
I see what you mean. But with the Jews, it's like they're in the Middle East.
Because I think also it's
like if we did what we did in Afghanistan, but to like, I don't know, to Canada or something.
Sure. Because at the end of the day, man, I mean, I think a lot of people, because they've watched Hollywood movies growing up and they're used to, the Jewish guy Edward Goldstein that went to the bagel store every Sunday, then they have a certain view of Jews, and they think that that's what all Jews are in Israel. But if you go there and you see that Israel as a whole is a very Middle Eastern influenced country. Most of the local food was brought there from Jews from Arab countries. The music, the culture is predominantly Middle Eastern. Most Jews in Israel are darker skinned. Some of them have black skin. Many of them have brown skin. And so when you go there, you realize that, it's a Middle Eastern country with a majority of Jews in it, as opposed to Muslims. Interesting. But when you watch the news in America, all you see is Al Jazeera and these anti-Israel media sources. All they do is interview white European-looking Jews, and they portray all Israelis that way. And so, of course, when you're an American and you look at that, you go, it's just a bunch of white people colonizing a brown people's land. They should leave. But if you actually go there, you'll see a very different story. There's a very different picture. And also, many Arabs in that region are very light-skinned, which people don't know that. They think it's a bunch of brown people with donkeys, and then the Jews are all living in these beautiful homes in these fancy cities, and they built it on top of these indigenous primitive tribes, and they took it's just I understand completely how so many people see it that way. And if you actually went to Israel and you saw the culture of all people, there's a lot of non-Jews that live in Israel and they have freedom of religion, freedom of speech. They own businesses. They're lawyers. They're doctors. They're nurses. They're in the Israeli parliament. Like there's so much happening that the media that doesn't support Israel shows. But if you do your research, you'll see that that's the case. So Jewish people come from this country, and
My question now is, how do you see this ending? How does this end?
it's gonna end by, well, in an ideal world, my hope is that the Arab world as a whole will denounce jihadism and acknowledge Jewish rule and say, hey, you guys aren't so bad. You guys are actually pretty cool. You give us more freedoms than we have in our country. In our countries, we can wear a hijab if we want. We can not wear one if we want. We can be gay. We can be straight. We can drink. We can not drink. I believe you should separate church and state. If somebody is Muslim and they want to drink alcohol, that's between them and God. No other human has the right to enforce those things on someone else. That's my opinion. And Israel does that. If a Muslim wants to drink a fucking beer in Israel, he can do that. Maybe his dad might beat him, but the country is not going to do anything.
Right.
And so you have those freedoms. So I think it's going to come from acceptance. I think if that happens, it's going to take a very long time, but it's already happening. I can show you Arab Muslims on social media that resonate with say what I'm saying, and they are helping to teach people in their countries. They're really very well-known guys that are friends with Israelis, that meet with them, and we're doing business with these countries, and it's very possible. I want peace with them. And I think it's becoming more and more possible. And I think a large reason why we had so much fighting is because Jews weren't used to ruling land. Like we weren't used to, because what we essentially did is we reconquered the land.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that the people we're fighting with, what we'd call the Palestinians, can't be here. They just have to accept that whether they like it or not, the Jews are back. And they say, well, you haven't been here for thousands of years, and some of you lived in Germany, and some of you lived in New York. It's like, well, when you kicked us around in Europe, and you kicked us around in the Middle East, and now you don't want us to be in the land that we've been in, the land that the land that Scripture says we have a promise to, the land that we've prayed about every single day for thousands of years. There's no statute of limitations. There's no statute of limitations on how long I have to come back to something. If your people were kicked out of the Philippines and 1,000 years later, thousands of Filipinos come back to the Philippines and conquer that group, tough shit.
Right.
If the Native Americans now band together and there's, I don't know, 100,000, they're not going to be able to. But they reconquer the United States and they succeed. C'est la vie, man.
Yeah.
Like, I would like to believe that the Americans that are now here would still get the opportunity to live here. But if the Native Americans win militarily and they get to call the shots, okay, hey, that's how the world is.
That is a very, 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 very valid point.
Just this hasn't happened in history where a group was kicked out and then literally thousands of years later they're like, hey, we're back. So I understand the Palestinians are like, hey, well, fucking we've been here for a long time and this isn't fair. And we're like, well, all of your cousins in all over the Middle East, in Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, we got kicked out of all these countries. There was the Holocaust in Europe. All over the world, you guys are kicking us around. We need a land. Enough is enough. And so where do you want us to go? Mars? We invented things. I'm not saying our shit doesn't stink, right? I'm not saying, I'm sure you've met Jews that you didn't like. Maybe you've met a bunch. I'm not going to act like our shit doesn't stink. But at the end of the day, we've contributed a lot of amazing things to the world, disproportionately. To a large degree, I think that the hate, to a large degree, I think the cause of that hate is envy and jealousy. And I reiterate that we're not perfect people. We've, like anyone else, we've done things wrong, but people hated us for it and blamed us for things. And so at some point, after persecution after persecution, we needed our country, and what better place to settle in the land that we've wanted to come back to, the land that we plan to eventually come back to. I think we're not going anywhere. I think for pro-Palestinians that say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which implies that Israel will be no longer, that the whole land will be Palestine. Good luck. I mean, good luck. You can keep trying to accomplish that. It's not working very well. Or you can be more realistic. And when I say realistic, I mean, or you can admit and come to terms with the fact that this is not a group of people that are foreign to this. Yes, maybe their grandparents moved there 60 years ago, but Jews and Israel are synonymous. You can try to delegitimize that concept as much as you want. You're never going to convince Jewish people that they're foreign to the land of Israel. You're never going to do that. It's just not going to happen. You can call us white, you can call us German, you can call us French, you can call us you could tell us to go back to where we came from. When we were there, we got kicked out of it. When the European Jews were in Germany, the Nazis killed us for being Jews. Doesn't matter if we were religious, atheist, rich, poor, dumb, smart. You were Jewish from your father, from your mother. You had 25% Jewish blood. You're done. You're getting sent to the camps. You were a Jew from Baghdad. Bye bye. So we didn't belong in Europe. We weren't white enough in Europe. We weren't Arab enough in the Middle East. We don't belong in it. We're colonizers in it. So should we go to Mars?
Right.
Do you get me? Mm-hmm. Like, at some point we had to say, too fucking bad.
Yeah.
And it's better. And I'll finish off with the point of, if having a country means that we're going to be hated and judged, but we can survive and have a military and protect ourselves, then that is something that we're willing to do, as opposed to being loved by the world, but being at the whim of our host countries. I'd rather choose the former, man.
No, man, it sounds like you're two things. You're really passionate about this, but not only that, like, you're really well informed on a lot of this stuff. And is this stuff that you studied, or is this stuff that you just
from living in it, from observing, but also from listening to both sides a lot, dude.
Yeah.
Like, from playing devil's advocate a lot, from looking inward and saying,
right,
am I completely delusional? Should I just be pro-Palestinian? Is this whole concept stupid? Should I just support the Palestinian side completely? And I've questioned my thoughts a lot, and I've come to the conclusion that I've come to because I've listened to so many points on the other side.
I think that's like why you can have such a good opinion on it, because you listen to both, and you've listened to both.
Yeah, dude.
I think a majority of people are kind of like me, where they don't even know what's going on. Mm-hmm. They just know, they see the fighting, and I think that they see people fighting and they say, stop fighting. But it's a lot more complex than that. That's why even when we started the conversation, I was like, to preface this, I know nothing about any of this stuff. Anything I say could be completely ignorant, but like, to hear it coming from you, who's someone who's studied both sides and lived in it, it's very different.
Yeah. And again, man, I think peace is very possible. I think Jews having a tiny land the size of New Jersey in that region is not a threat to that region's peace whatsoever. And I believe the opposite is true, that it is a beautiful thing and we can coexist very well together. Right. I think there just has to be an overall acceptance that we're there and we have a lot in common. Like, Jews in general have a lot in common with Arabs and Muslims. And we have our differences religiously, but we have a lot more in common than we do different.
Right.
Especially the Jews that never went to Europe, the Jews that always stayed in the Middle East. Food, music, culture, dress, just, a lot of them spoke Arabic when they lived in those countries. So Arabic kind of died out. Like, Hebrew is the predominant language in Israel, but there are still Jews that speak Arabic. If we focus on what we have more in common than what we have different, we can get along very well. And it exists. Like, in Israel, you have Arabs and Jews that work together, that do business together, that are friends. But it's tough. It's tough to trust each other, because there are stories where Jews have killed Arabs. There are definitely stories where Arabs have killed Jews, unfortunately. And there's a trust. There's a lack of trust between both sides, and it's understandable. But yeah, I think I don't want to just be more critical of my enemy, but I think they do have to. I think we are more willing to accept them at this point than they are willing to accept us. And I know that you're going to have pro-Palestinians that'll go, that's not true, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it is. I think like Arab people are very hospitable. Like if you've ever been to an Arab country,
Yeah.
they're extremely warm and hospitable. They could have nothing and they'll give you half of what they have. But they're also, because they're so warm, they're also very hot-blooded. And this also applies for especially Jews that come from Arab countries have that also. Where Europeans tend to be colder. People from the Middle East are very warm people, but they can also be very hot-tempered. So that it all ties in. Like if you anger them or you disrespect them, they will literally go nuts. But at the same time, they will literally give you the shirt off of their back, even if they don't know you. So yeah. Anyway, I hope that little.
No, this was good, bro. What time is it? I gotta roll here in a little bit.
Forever.
It's over 3:00. Yeah, I gotta roll.
Yep. Perfect. Ladies and gents, thank you
thank you for educating me a little bit about this. I definitely need to look more into it, but this is
you can watch my stuff if you want.
Yeah, it is good stuff because it's stuff that it's happening in the world. I need to know a little bit more. I think people should know a little bit more. So appreciate it, man. I don't know if you do your outro. How do you?
Yes, I'm just gonna, guys. Thank you for making it this far. I know it's we spent a hell of a lot of time together. This has been an episode of the Soothing Semantics podcast, episode I believe 192. Like, subscribe, share. Of course, leave your comments. Make sure to check out all of Rene's social media accounts. I'm going to drop them all in the description. If you're looking for marketing and advertisement, make sure to check him out as well at Lock Advertising, right?
Just do lacadconsulting.com. Nothing much. All my socials at Rene Lacad, lacadconsulting.com, SMM Deal Finder. Those are all my businesses, and this has been good, bro. Appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. That is a wrap, folks. Until next time.